Okay, can I just have your attention, please, again? We'll wait. Hello? We'll wait till after the Zvi Fischer and after we bench. Again, if you can guess, there's only one ingredient in here besides the challah. Only one. If you can get what?
Besides the what?
Besides the challah. Is what one ingredient that really gives it its great taste. If you can guess it, you win a $50 certificate towards a breakfast or a lunch and learn. Okay, Janusz, you hear me? Can you guess it from Poland? I put it by the thing here, maybe you could smell it. Okay? All right, let's do some announcements. Learning announcements today. Today's a week of learning sponsored by that's the wrong one. A week of learning sponsored by Allison and Neil Paris to commemorate the first year site of Allison's father, Arthur Kahn, Alto Yaakov, and Abraham Cohen. And today's Lunch and Learn is sponsored by Jeffrey Michael, Yosef Gottlieb, and Meir Gabe, in memory of Aryeh Leib ben Harav.
Hi, doctor.
Hello, Janusz.
Hello, doctor.
The first of Bas Khan.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Robin Percha, Rona Baruch, Bisara. All the Neshamas should have an Aliyah. All right, we'll start. Let's go. We have your attention. She's ready to start.
Okay. Brushing teeth on Shabbos. The reason I picked this topic, one of the reasons is for two reasons. One is because it's a halachic topic, which is probably very restricted in its scope, just brushing teeth, but it has a lot of issues with it. And that's what I find very interesting, all the issues, not the final psak, which there isn't a final psak, but all the issues that we're going to be dealing with. Each one of them really can be a whole shiur. And I'm going to give you just a few minutes on each one. And so it's going to be somewhat of a superficial overview of the topics, but just it's really gives you an amazing look into the world of halacha, of what goes into a simple issue like brushing teeth. But the main reason I picked it, well, that was the main reason. The secondary reason I picked it is because everybody can leave happy. There are gedolim on both sides, meaning if you've been brushing your teeth for many years, sometimes you go to a shiur on halacha and you realize, I didn't know that. I wasn't supposed to do that, and you feel kind of guilty. And then there's a lot of tension in you. Am I going to change? Whatever. With brushing teeth on Shabbos, whatever you've been doing, there are gedolim who will back you. So you will leave the shiur very happy. Meaning, if you've been brushing your teeth on Shabbos for years, you're not going to walk out and say, I shouldn't have done that. No, there are major gedolim who say brushing teeth on Shabbos is perfectly mutter. And if you like to be machmir, right? And you say, oh no, I don't do anything, unless everybody says you're allowed to do it, then there are gedolim who are machmir. So there'll be no guilt with this year. So let's start. Our issues 1, 2, and 3 have to do with the toothpaste. Memareach. Memareach means smoothing. Memareach is a tolada of the of memachek. Memachek, all the melechos on Shabbos go back and originate with the Mishkan. So in the Mishkan, they would take hides and they would use them for decorative purposes, covers, curtains. Well, you gotta take off the hair and the wool. So you would, memachek means to scrape off. So you're actually smoothing the actual substance. Memareach, which is a tolada, a derivative of memachek, means to actually take something that is solid, semi-solid, and spread it on your skin. All right? So memareach is asur. It's biblically asur if you take a soft, actual solid substance like wax or putty. This is where you get into problems with chapstick or deodorant stick, right? It's rabbinically prohibited if it's a soft, semi-solid, like a thick ointment, right? Whatever will not pour out, if you turn it over and will not pour out, you are not allowed to smooth it on your skin. That's the Issa B'Mareach, okay? Could be biblically also, could be rabbinically also. If something that when you turn it over will pour out, even though it might be very viscous, liquid soap, okay, or liquidy lotion, but if it actually pours out of the bottle or the tube, you're allowed to, you could take oil, or you could take a liquid soap and rub it on your skin on Shabbos, that's okay. But you can't do Vaseline, I mean, it's not gonna pour out, okay? So, now Rav Moshe was very strict. On all the issues, very strict. At the end, I'll tell you what Rav Moshe suggested, should you want to brush your teeth. There's even an out with the most strict opinion, which is Rav Moshe. So he was very strict. He said you cannot use regular toothpaste because it's a semi-solid and it's prohibited to smooth it on the teeth. Okay. As you can see then, Rav Ovadia Yosef and the Rav is Rav Soloveitchik, they were lenient with this. Why were they lenient? I mean, they held by Memareach, right? So the Rav explained that when I take a lotion or Vaseline or whatever, and I smooth it on my skin, I want that to stay on my skin. The reason I'm smoothing it out is because my skin is very dry, let's say. So I want to rub it on, okay? So oil you're allowed to, Vaseline you would not be allowed to. Says Rav, but here, the toothpaste, I have no intent for the toothpaste to stay on my teeth, right? I'm putting the toothpaste in for whatever reason. You want it to wipe off the grime on your teeth, you want to freshen your breath, but it's not memareach like Vaseline on the skin. You don't want it to stay on. So he says, when you don't want it to stay on, and it will not stay on, that's not the issue of memareach. So according to Rav Ovadia and Rav, there's no issue of memareach. So you can use regular toothpaste. But Moshe said you cannot use regular toothpaste because he says you are smoothing it over. The fact that it's not going to stay on did not affect Rav Moshe. Number two, molid. Molid is an Issa D'Rabbanan to create something new. More specifically, to change the status. We had it by snow. Remember, but we did snow. So to squeeze snow, there's an issue of schita, right? But also there's an issue of what's called molid. Molid means I'm going to go from a solid to a liquid. To change a state, that's a rabbinical issue of molid. You're creating something new. So says Rav Moshe, and the other more famous Rav Moshe Isserles, the Ramah, they were strict with it. They said toothpaste is a problem with molid because toothpaste, you're taking a solid, a soft solid, it doesn't pour out, and you're going to squish it around and you're going to create a liquid out of it. So Rav Moshe says, problem with molid. Rav Ovadia, who follows the psak of the Shulchan Aruch, and Rav Shechter say this is not really molid. Why? Because molid, you take a real solid substance and you turn it into a real liquid. It says here, toothpaste is not really solid, right? It's like more of a squishy paste, and you're going to make it into a squishy foam. It's not really liquid. So they were not concerned with molid. By the way, just had nothing to do, as a total aside, there is a whole discussion of whether you can make ice on Shabbos. That's the flip side of it, because you're taking a liquid and turning it into a solid. So you would say, well, that should be also because of molid. So there are those who say, that's right. You can't make ice on Shabbos because you're going from a liquid to a solid. But there are many Gedolim who permit making ice on Shabbos, but it should be for Shabbos, right? Meaning Shabbos lunch, you finish lunch and you see, there's no more ice. And so this ice is going to be for your Melava Malka. This ice is going to be for your Sunday afternoon barbecue. Then you shouldn't do that because now you're getting into Hachana, besides the issue of molid. But, right, so Shalashuris is perfectly okay. The other reason is not just the Hachana issue, is you can easily see a difference between squeezing snow, let's say, or squeezing toothpaste and going from a solid to a liquid. You're actively doing something with your hands to cause the solid to form. The liquid to form from the solid. By making ice, it's very passive. You're taking the liquid, you're not doing anything with your hands to that liquid. All you're doing is you're putting in a place, the freezer, and it will become ice on its own. So that's another reason that you can be very lenient with it. Nevertheless, they say that it should be for tzorech. It should be, meaning not just, I may need, Friday night, you finish your meal, and you realize, well, I have 15 guests coming tomorrow for lunch, and I don't have any ice cubes. It's the middle of the summer. Everybody's going to want ice. So go ahead and do it. That would be okay.
Ice. I don't know if this is correct. Ice also reports back to its original state. It's even there.
When you give it, it'll eventually become water, right? So that's a good point. That's another reason to be lenient with it. Okay. So that's a machlokas whether you have to deal with molid. The third issue is this is the least of the issues because very few really argue about this, but just to bring it up, and it's interesting for discussion, medicinal, refuah, meaning fluoride strengthens the teeth. They say that fluoride also makes the teeth more resistant to the extremes of temperature. And fluoride prevents cavities, prevents decay. So is there an issue here of medicinal? Because you know that there is a rabbinical gzera that for minor issues, you have a minor headache, you're not supposed to take Tylenol. Because there was an old gzera of Shema Yitchon. Because in the older days, they would take a plant, they would take a leaf, they would grind it, now you have medicine. So the rabbis were afraid that you might grind it, so they said nothing medicinal. And in fact, the Rambam, as you can see, is very strict. If you take something and your intent is for medicinal purposes, you're not allowed to do it. So, but the Rambam would be lenient with toothpaste. Let's suppose, so the Rambam would say, if your intent is because I want to strengthen my teeth, well, that might be issue. But if your purpose is simply to freshen your breath, then the Rambam would be lenient. But the reason it's not an issue is for two reasons, which is two very important concepts. One is preventive measures usher. So I'll tell you a story that happened with me. So many years ago, I was at a Shavuos program, and the lunch was dairy. Now I'm lactose intolerant, so everything, every food was there except for the salads was dairy. So I always take lactate tablets before I eat dairy. So Rav Shechter was there. Now Rav Shechter is very makpid on meat on Yom Tov, right? The idea for Rav Shechter to eat a dairy meal on Yom Tov, Simchas Yom Tov, is like, he wouldn't chop it. So what they did was the whole dining room, there were hundreds of people there. The whole dining room was filled with people. They had a side room that had a small buffet, like some deli or whatever, a little bit, and that's where Rav Shechter and his wife were there, and 2 or 3 other people eating their meat. So I went to Rav Shechter and I asked him, can I take my lactate tablets? Usually you don't take pills on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So he said, sure you can, right? Lest you think Rav Shechter is always such a machmir. He said, sure you can. And he explained that you're not treating a problem that you have now. You're taking the lactate to prevent something. He said the issur of medicine on Shabbos or Yom Tov is not to prevent, it's to treat. So right? So I haven't eaten anything dairy yet. I don't have a problem now. I want to prevent a problem. He said, no problem, take the lactate tablets, which made me very happy because I could take the lactate tablets and go have the cheese blintzes and all that. So the fluoride, I don't have a cavity now. I don't have any tooth decay now. I'm trying to prevent it, right? So that would be okay. The other concept, which is important, is, let's suppose it's Friday night and I have a sore throat. So I want to drink some hot tea. Why do I want to drink the hot tea? I'm not usually a hot tea guy, Why do I want to drink hot tea? To soothe my sore throat. So that sounds like medicinal. So maybe I shouldn't be allowed to drink the hot tea. The answer is I'm allowed to. Even though my intent is to soothe my sore throat, hot tea is called ma'achal briim. It's food that healthy people eat. A lot of people who are healthy drink hot tea. So if to take something that healthy people eat or drink, but your intent is for medicinal, that's okay, that's mutter. So I'd be allowed to have hot tea, even though I usually don't drink hot tea Friday night. I'd be allowed to do it for my sore throat because there are millions of people who drink hot tea who are perfectly healthy. So it's not really an issue. The third issue is really not an issue by anybody. So that's the toothpaste. The main thing is the issues in mareach and molid. Now, let's go to number 4. 4, 5, and 6 deal with the toothbrush, right? So number 4 is squeezing. You're not allowed to squeeze a liquid from a solid. That's schita, right? So the question is, automatically, most people, they wet their toothbrush. And then the concern is, then I'm going to press the toothbrush against my teeth. And the liquid that I wet the toothbrush with is going to come out of the toothbrush. So is that a form of schita? Is that squeezing, that the water is in the toothbrush and now it's going to come out? So first of all, it's only rabbinic isser. Why is it only rabbinic isser? The Gemara discusses whether you're allowed to squeeze wet hair. And the Gemara says it's not usher to squeeze wet hair, right? How you got your hair wet on Shabbos, it's a different issue. Okay? But let's suppose you got your hair wet, and now you want to squeeze the water out. So the Gemara says there's no issur to squeeze their hair out. Why not? Because the Gemara explains the issur of squeezing is if something has absorbed or has liquid in it, and you're going to get it out, right? Squeezing an orange, right? You're going to get it out. But the Gemara says, hair doesn't absorb water. The strand, each strand of hair, the water doesn't get into the strand. The water gets trapped in between the strands of hair. So when you squeeze it, you're not really squeezing the water out of each strand. So that's not the issue of squeezing. Yet, Chazal say, since it looks very much like you're squeezing, because you have a clump of hair and you're going to squeeze it and water is going to come out. So forget the physics or the chemistry, where's the water coming out from? The rabbi said, it looks very much like you're squeezing, so it's usher. So squeezing wet hair is usher midrabanan. So squeezing, if we're going to hold by this, the machmir position, so squeezing the water out of the toothbrush as you apply pressure of the toothbrush to the teeth, at worst, it's an issur drabanan. Okay, that's very important. Okay? But that's what Rav Moshe was very strict with this. Moshe said, when you press the toothbrush against the teeth, you're squeezing out liquid, and that's the bristles is like the hair, and just like we have exer drabanan not to squeeze wet hair on Shabbos, you shouldn't squeeze the toothbrush. Says that Moshe. Now come a lot of leniencies. And each one of these leniency can be a 45-minute shiur, right? But don't worry, you're not going to sit here for that long. The Magen Avraham has a leniency that he has no intent to squeeze. He's brushing his teeth. He has no intent to squeeze the water out. What do you mean he has no intent? Magen Avraham says it's a davar she'eino miskaven. So I know we've, done it before, and I'm pretty sure everybody kind of knows it more or less. But let's just spend 2 minutes on it because it's such an important concept in Shabbos. Davar she'eino miskaven means I'm going to do action A, which is perfectly mutter. But action B may result from doing action A, and action B is usher. Am I allowed to do action A? So that's a machlokas of Rav Shimon and Rav Yehuda throughout Shas. And Rav Shimon says, yeah, you're allowed to do A. What happens if action B occurs? So Rav Shimon says, you're patur. because you never meant, right? The malacha on Shabbos is what's called meleches machsheves, which means intentional work. Like you have to put thought
But
into
you
it.
know it's, even though you know it's going to occur.
You have to
Even though you
intend
know
to
it's-
do it. You have to intend to do it. So, the famous example that Chazal deal with in the Gemara is I want to move my chair from in my backyard from point A to point B. So that's action A, to move a chair from A to B. Is that mutter? Of course it's mutter. But as I drag it or I move it, I may make a little furrow or ditch. That's usher. Not allowed to do that. So Rav Shimon says, go ahead and move your chair. What happens if I make a furrow? Rav Shimon says you're putter. You never intended to that. That's davar she'eino miskabe. You had no kavanah to do this. Says Rav Yehuda, if you do action B, of course you're chayav. It's like the lawyer would say, did you make a furrow? I made a furrow. I didn't mean to do. I don't care what you meant to do, says Rav Yehuda. You made a furrow on Shabbos, you're chayav. So don't do action A because you don't take the chance. But everybody agrees that if action B, the usher action B, will definitely occur, then you can't do action A. Meaning, if it rained last night and the ground is wet and mushy, and this chair is extremely heavy, I can't pick it up. So I'm going to drag it on muddy ground. Of course, I'll make a furrow, right? I'll make a ditch. So even Rav Shimon would agree you're not allowed to do that. So that's called a psik reisha. Psik reisha means it's 100% going to happen, or 99.9% it's going to happen. So then you're not allowed to do action A. You'll say, but action A is mutter. Yeah, but in action A, you'll inevitably do action B. According to Rav Shimon, and we pass with Rav Shimon, you're allowed to do action A if action B may or may not happen. But if action B will definitely happen, you're not allowed to do action A. Okay? So the Magen of Rav's leniency that was a davar she'eino miskabein, Rav Moshe would say that doesn't help me. When I wet the toothbrush and then I press it against my teeth, I know water's going to come out. So Moshe looks at this as a psik reisha. See, so that's why the first leniency I didn't mean to squeeze. The Rashba has an interesting leniency. He says, you guys read the Gemara wrong. When the Gemara said there is no isser to squeeze wet hair, and you said, oh, that means that's the biblical isser. It's not, because the hair itself doesn't absorb the water, but there's a rabbinic isser. The Rashba says, no, you misread the Gemara. When the Gemara says there's no isser to squeeze wet hair, read my lips. It's no isser to squeeze, even rabbinically. Unless it's something is absorbed inside the object, then there's no isser to squeeze it. Thing is, we don't pass like the Rashba. We hold that there is a rabbinical isser to squeeze wet hair, and therefore there would be a rabbinical isser to squeeze the bristles on the toothbrush. Another potential leniency is that the isser to squeeze let's say A from B, the juice from the salad, is if I want the juice. If as soon as it comes out, it's useless to me, or I create a situation where it's useless. I mean, this came up in Israel with milking cows, and there was tar balei chayim because the udder was so full, it was painful to the animal. What are you going to do? So initially, before it became automated, and that obviously you have a non-Jew do it, but is that you'd be allowed to do it if you let the milk go directly to the ground. Meaning, that milk is useless to me. Now that's a whole issue as itself, but I'm squeezing it. But you're squeezing it, right? So if it's going to be useless, the question was, well, is that mutter or is this just rabbinically usher? Because if it's just rabbinically usher, maybe, just maybe, and I'm not passing it here at all, and I'm just throwing it out, maybe it would be mutter because it's our balei chayim, okay? So one possibility is, I don't care about the water coming out, right? I just care about swishing around the toothpaste or the water. So Rav Shlomo Zalman did not like this leniency. He says, of course you care about it. That's the water's in the toothbrush. You wet it like that, and then you're doing it. Now you could say that many people wet the toothbrush, not so much because they want the water there, because they have the toothpaste, right? It's just, the water kind of softens the bristles a little bit, so you won't damage your gums. All right? So that's a whole question, but this is a strong point in favor of Rav Moshe, and yet, still, as you'll see at the end when we just review it, the Rav Shechter, Rav Ovadia really had no problem with wetting the toothbrush and using it. They did not think it was squeezing, either because you didn't mean to, you don't need it, or because the bristles don't actually absorb the water. Number 5 is hachana. So this is the issue of most people wash the toothbrush afterwards. So this is not an issue with the actual brushing, but afterwards you run water over it, or you use your hands or whatever it is to wash it, so it's not filled with a toothpaste. Are you allowed to do that? So if you hold that toothbrushing is mutter, so you brush your tooth, let's say Friday night, and then next time you're going to brush your teeth is Shabbos morning, so there's no issue with hachana, Shabbos to Shabbos, you're allowed to prepare. But what if let's suppose you brush your teeth every morning when you wake up and just before you go to sleep. So you're going to brush your teeth Shabbos morning. You're not going to brush your teeth again till after Shabbos. Can you clean your toothbrush Shabbos morning? Because you're doing it. You're not going to use that toothbrush until after Shabbos. So that's where the question of hachana comes up. Again, Rav Moshe and Rav Ovadia were strict. Rav Moshe was strict about this whole, every issue was strict. Rav Moshe said, of course it's hachana. You're not going to use this toothbrush until after Shabbos, so you can't do it. Rav Shlomo Zalman was lenient because he says it's a routine, automatic thing to do, which takes a second. He compared it to the following. Let's suppose it's Shabbos afternoon and you're standing by your bookshelf. You want to look up something in a book. Okay? You pull the book out, go to the page, you read the paragraph. You're not going to need this book at all the rest of Shabbos. Can you put it back in the shelf? So you say, well, I'm going to put it back in the shelf, but I'm not going to use this book again till tomorrow. Is that called hachana? Shlomo says this. That's not hachana. That's an effortless, automatic thing to do. You're not actively doing something in preparation. You took a book out, you put the book back. Okay? He says that's the same thing with a toothbrush. You take it, you do it, you put it under water, you do it. I'm not doing it as hachana. Rav Shechter says the following. He's lenient with this. He says you can wash your toothbrush. Why? You're not, says Rav Shechter, you're not washing the toothbrush as preparation for the next time you're using it. You're washing the toothbrush because you don't want the dirty toothbrush right now. This is like the dirty dishes on Shabbos, right? Now there's a whole issue. Can you wash your dishes if you're not going to use those dishes again? So let's suppose Friday night, you eat, you have dirty dishes, right? Now you're going to use those dishes Shabbos lunch. So of course you can wash them. You're preparing Friday night for Shabbos lunch, no problem. Let's suppose you're going out Shabbos lunch. So you finish your Friday night meal, you wash your dishes. You ate, now you have dirty dishes, you put them in the sink. You're not going to need those dishes until Sunday, Monday, or until the following Shabbos. You can't prepare from this Shabbos to next Shabbos. So you're not going to need it. So is it a problem? So again, if you're a man and dirty dishes in the sink absolutely don't bother you, you think it's kind of nice, right? Then you really shouldn't do it because then you're preparing for after Shabbos. But if you're a woman, right? I'm not trying to be sexist, but if you're a woman and dirty dishes in the sink stares your Shabbos, it's not nice, it's not Shabbos-tic, then you'd be allowed to wash the dishes Friday night, even though you're not going to need those dishes again on Shabbos. Okay? Because you're not doing it as preparation. You're doing it because I can't live in this house on Shabbos. The Shabbos, Oleg Shabbos, whatever it is, and there are dirty dishes piled in the sink. Says Rav Shechter, that's the same thing here. I'm not washing the toothbrush because I'm preparing it for the next time I use it. I'm doing that because I'm my bathroom sink on my counter. I don't want this dirty toothbrush lying here. The last issue is chavala, which means that the gums will bleed. Chavala is bruising. Bruising means that blood has come out of the blood vessel, so that's why it's, right? Ordinarily, right, I have blood vessels here. You can't see the blood, right? But if you hit me hard enough and you cause that blood to come out of the blood vessel and the blood would be in the skin, so I would have a black and blue mark. Okay, so that's chavala. It's a tolada of either shochet, which means killing, or a tolada of dash, which means separating one from the other. You're separating the blood from the blood vessel. So there are many who say, so really you're not supposed to cause bleeding on Shabbos. That's the whole issue of, can you have a blood test on Shabbos? And so that's a problem, those who are strict. But Ravadia was lenient because he says again, it's a davar she'eino miskaven. Is it a psik reisha? For most people, it's not a psik reisha, right? Sometimes the girls will bleed, sometimes it will not. So it's perfectly good. So if you permit to brushing your teeth, so that's action A. So that's mutter. But action B is, I may cause my gums to bleed. Well, that'll cause bleeding on Shabbos. So if it's true that every time you brush your teeth, there's bleeding, you're not gonna brush your teeth. Because that's a psik reisha. You're gonna do chaval, you're gonna cause bruising, right? But if, as most people, unless maybe you're on a blood thinner, maybe you have very sensitive gum, whatever it is, then you're not allowed to do it. But if, let's suppose, half the time they bleed, okay, so that's not a psik reisha. So then you'd be allowed to do it because we paskin the davar she'eino miskaven is mutter when it's not a psik reisha. Then you be allowed to do it. So just as a quick review, the rulings, the Rav Soloveitchik, Rav Shechter, mutter to brush your teeth with wet toothbrush. Okay, there's no issue of memareach, there's no issue of molid, there's no issue of chavala, there's no schita, and then you're allowed to wash your toothbrush. God bless Rav Shechter and Rav the Rav. Rav Ovadia agrees, but listen to this. Rav Ovadia suggests that you have a different toothbrush for Shabbos, because he held that brushing your teeth is an uvdun dechol. So you should have a separate one. Now, I've never done it because I don't brush my teeth on Shabbos, but I've never looked into it. But I've heard years ago that in the From World of Brooklyn, you'll never find this in New Jersey, but in the From World of Brooklyn, there are toothbrushes where the bristles are very far apart, not tight. So the water really doesn't get trapped in them. Shabbos toothbrush, okay? So Rav Ovadia felt that it's better to have a Shabbos toothbrush. Rav Shlomo Zalman said that you should not use regular toothpaste. You should use liquid toothpaste, which there is, okay? Now, Rav Moshe was strict on all accounts. Don't use a regular toothpaste because of memareach. Don't wet the toothbrush because of schita. Don't wash after use because of achana. What did Rav Moshe suggest to do? Right? Obviously, Rav Moshe would say, okay, use mouthwash, whatever it is, but you want to really do something with that? He says, put the liquid toothpaste. Right? He doesn't want you to use regular toothpaste for the memareach. Use liquid toothpaste and put it directly in your mouth. Don't put it on your toothbrush because he's concerned for squeezing, right? So don't wet the toothbrush. So put the liquid toothpaste directly into the mouth. Then take a dry toothbrush, right? A Shabbos, right? And don't wash. Now, I should tell you that many people, like myself, very much use Rav Ribiat's Lamed Tes Velachos, which is the most thorough and the best, and it's extremely well written with lots of examples on Shabbos. It's a 4-volume book on the 39 Melachos of Shabbos. It's a phenomenal work. And Rav Ribiat very often paskins Rav Moshe. So if you read that, you would say that you should not brush your teeth on Shabbos because of all the issues where Rav Moshe was strict. Just to leave you for 1 minute, okay? So that's the topic of brushing teeth on Shabbos. You brush your teeth on Shabbos. You want to continue brush your teeth. God bless you. You can continue to do it, and Rav Shechter will. You don't want to do it. You decided that for this year in the month of Elul, for the rest of your life, you want to take on a chumrah to show God what a tzaddik you are, and you want to then say, okay, I'm not going to brush my teeth because Rav Moshe said I shouldn't do it unless you use his suggestion. Then fine, you have Rav Moshe. But just the thing is, we all said Hallel this morning, right? So 3 Hallel trivia questions. Okay, just leave you with this. what 4 countries are mentioned in Hallel? So what 4 countries, obviously in Hebrew, what 4 countries are mentioned in Hallel? So in the second paragraph of Hallel, you have, right, B'tzeis Yisrael, Mitzrayim. So you have Israel, right, Israel, Mitzrayim, right? You have, in that paragraph, they talk about the splitting of the Yarden, that's Jordan. And then, less obvious, we say, Hodu Hashem Kitov. Hodu in Hebrew is India. So you have 4 countries in Hallel. Next question. On which Rosh Chodesh, there's only one, on which Rosh Chodesh do we read a complete Hallel? Right? Usually we say Chatzi Hallel Rosh Chodesh. But on one Rosh Chodesh, every year we say a full Hallel. What's the answer? Very good. Rosh Chodesh Teves, because that always comes in the middle of Hanukkah. So Rosh Chodesh Teves, we say full Hallel, not because it's Rosh Chodesh Teves, but because it's Hanukkah. Very good. And on which Rosh Chodesh do we not read Hallel at all? Very good. Rosh Chodesh Tishrei coming up. We're not going to read Hallel at all because it's Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah, we don't say Hallel for whatever reason. Okay. All right. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
One
One of these days, I'll see you in person one of these days.
Okay.
T-Next's a long way off. Take care. Have a good
Take care.
Shabbos. Have a good week. Shkayak.
You too.
Thank you.
Azarim bedima verina yitzoru halayelechu no semesher azara boyavo no.
Okay, before we do this bench, anybody want to take a guess? One last guess. What? Wow. When that was soaked in premium Walmart ice. That's only. It's $50 to a breakfast or lunch. Pretty good, Jonathan.
Rabbi Tanya Barech. He Shem Lai Barach Neta Ve'adolam Bershut Ma'anan Rabbi Tanya Barech Shachanu Mishelo Osham Shelo Tuvo Chayinu Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Hazan Et Haolam Tuvo Betuvo B'Chein B'Chesed U'Rachamim Hu Noten Lechem V'Chol Basar Kilam Chesdo Tuvo HaGadol Tamin Lo Chesalanu Ve'al Yechsalanu Mazon V'Baruch Shmo HaGadol Ki Hu El Zon V'Nes L'Kol V'Tiv L'Kol V'Mechin Mazon L'Chol V'Yotav V'Shem Baruch Atah Adonai Hazan Et HaKol. Baruch Atah Adonai al haaretz ve'al hamazon. Haynu v'lavtein yalev yavo v'yagiv v'yara'ev v'yiratzeh v'yishama v'yipakeh v'yizachem zichron zichron mishpat zichron kulam chabin tzil panecha l'kutav v'lechein l'chesh v'rachamim v'chein shalom v'yom rosh hachodesh hazeh. Bnei Yerushalayim v'Rav Kodesh b'nei Rav Yameinu Baruch Atah Adonai b'nei Barachim Av Yerushalayim. Amen. Gate Lanu Gmalanu Gmalenu Gmalenu Ad Chaim L'Chesed Tav Shalom V'Rachamim V'Chaim Shalom V'Chol Tov U'Mikol Tuv L'Olam Al Yechasreinu. V'Vasalah V'Vasalah Tovot Yeshuot V'Nechamot. We nivvarech. 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 We nivvar את כל המסובים כאן, אותם ואיתם, לראות כמו השם, אותם כמו השם, יברך אותנו כאן, יברך השם, ואמר אמן, ואמרום ילם הוא יחדש לנו את החודש הזה לטובה ולברכה. לגדול יש לנו